The Linnaean system was the original method of classifying organisms. However, a modern system has now been developed by Carl Woese, known as the three-domain system. Outline the benefits of the three-domain system compared to the original system and how this system was developed. 6 marks. As you can see from the mark scheme, there's an awful lot of points that you can say here to get the marks. The important thing is that you only need to say 6, but you need to make sure that you have at least 1 point from each section. So you need to have at least 1 point explaining what the Linnaean system is, at least 1 point explaining what the three-domain system is, and at least 1 as to how the systems were developed. Ideally, you want 2 from each. So what can you say about the Linnaean system? Well, it's the system based on kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So it's the system whereby we get our binomial Latin names. So you get the 2 names, one for the generic name and one for the specific name. It's a hierarchical system. That means that the groups get smaller as you go down. There are less individuals in the genus and species groups than there are in the kingdom and phylum. The kingdom and phylum groups are far more generic, whereas the species, it's in the name, is very much more specific. They get increasingly specialized. They are classified according to their structure and their characteristics. So for example, you could have animal kingdom, plant kingdom, fungi, protists, and prokaryotes. However, this is relied purely on human judgment. So it's completely down to human judgment which species belong in which groups. It wasn't very accurate and it wasn't very scientific. The three-domain system allowed organisms to be divided into 3 groups. The archaea, which is primitive bacteria in extreme environments. The bacteria, which are true bacteria, so the more complex sort of bacteria that we see today. And then we have eukaryota, so protists, fungi, and animals. So any organism which is made up of eukaryotic cells rather than prokaryotic. This is a far more scientific approach compared to the Linnaean system. It's far less objective, it's far less subjective, so it's far less reliant on human opinion. Objective means that it's more set to rules. There are very specific requirements for things to fit into groups. It's more quantitative because it's based on experimental data in numbers, whereas the Linnaean system, again, was just based on human judgment and human opinion. So why was this new system developed, the new three-domain system? Well, they had new evidence of internal structures because they had looked at things through microscopes. When the Linnaean system was developed, microscopes didn't exist, so they couldn't look at cells, for example, to help them classify things. We had new evidence and knowledge of biochemical processes and development of new models, so far more was understood about the processes that happen in cells and organisms, and they can be classified in that way too. We also had new evidence from chemical analysis and DNA sequencing, so the vast majority of classification in the three-domain system is now based on genetic sequencing and looking at the genes that make up organisms and how similar they are to other organisms, helping them to be classified and relationships to be drawn up. So essentially, we moved from the Linnaean system to the three-domain system because we had far better knowledge, far better scientific knowledge of organisms, which has allowed us to be far more quantitative, far more objective when classifying organisms into groups, rather than relying on human judgment and simply looking at an organism.